2002, in early 2002, one of my good friends from SEAL Team 2, Neil Roberts, he was killed in Afghanistan, and he was the first SEAL to die after 9/11.
Mm.
Um, and I always thought it would kind of be cool someday to memorialize him in some way.
Hello and Happy New Year. Welcome to Marathon Swim Stories, where we explore the human side of the superhuman feats of endurance swimmers and those who support them. I'm marathon swimmer and coach Shannon Keegan. We're 7 days into 2022. So far, I'm optimistic to see what the new year will bring. No matter where you are in the world, I hope that you're staying healthy. I hear that some places are going into lockdown and pools are closing again. If that's the case for you, I hope that you'll enjoy going back through the archives and reliving some of the early marathon swim stories from 2020 and 2021. I'm finally getting around to this interview from late November. I spoke with one of the founding members of the Tampa Bay Frogman Swim. The original Frogman Swim, which has grown to several locations, is a 3.4 mile swim across Tampa Bay that runs each January. With just a few hundred swimmers, it has been known to raise as much as $700,000 for the Navy SEAL Foundation. This important organization provides for the families of fallen SEALs. In this episode, Captain John Dolittle tells us about himself, how he grew up a swimmer, but never thought that he would end up swimming across the English Channel. He did so to raise money for the family of his friend, Neil Roberts, who fell in combat not long after 9/11. I hope you enjoy today's episode.
Hello, John Dolittle. Thank you so much for being my guest today. Tell us, what's your story?
Hey, Shannon. Hi. Hey, thank you so much for having me on your podcast or video podcast or whatever the proper term is.
Right?
But I appreciate being on.
Series. I'm excited to have you. Tell me what the heck is your story? How did you find water? What made you push your limits in the water? Tell us everything.
Okay. Well, everything. Wow.
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. Well, okay. So I'm from Northern California, and I have a sister, and my two parents grew up in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. I swam through high school for Mike Troy. Mike was a double gold medalist, a world record holder in 1960 Olympics, and around that time frame, he was one of the dock councilman swimmers. Just an incredible guy. I he since has passed away, unfortunately, but my kind of second dad in a lot of ways. And Mike's story is intertwined into my story.
Okay.
Because Mike was a SEAL in Vietnam.
Okay.
And I always remember his stories during workouts, and they weren't stories about Vietnam, but they were stories about being a SEAL in training. Mm-hmm. And oh my God, the guy was the best storyteller. He would have been perfect for this podcast because he'd have you rolling on the freaking ground constantly. But I swam for Mike Troy. My sister swam for Mike as well. Tori Dolittle, now Tori Crawford. She swam at University of Arizona. She was a Wildcat.
Okay.
And she's and she went down the nursing path, and she lives in Santa Rosa with her family. My parents moved out of the Bay Area, and they live in Bodega Bay, Bodega Harbor in Northern California. Beautiful, beautiful area. I have lots of friends in the Bay Area, but I live in St. Petersburg, Florida now. But my swimming story all started with Mike Troy. Swam through high school. He helped me decide to swim, to try and swim in college. I wasn't like a star high school swimmer, but like maybe good enough to swim at a D1 school. So he helped me kind of navigate that. Long story longer, I ended up swimming at the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs.
Okay. I used to swim there as a kid.
I graduated from there. Yeah. That was kind of weird. California surf, skate, punk, going to a
military
academy.
Yeah.
That
so
was...
did you went to Air Force Academy for college?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. I went there in 1988. I graduated in 1992. But what's interesting is in 1991, we were told if you weren't in the top third of your graduating class, you were not going to go to pilot training. You were going to go do other stuff in the Air Force. And so I called my dad. My dad retired, or he was still in the Air Force at the time. And he's like, yeah, well, that's how it goes. And I was like, yeah, I don't think I want to be in the Air Force if I can't fly. And he's like, well, talk to Mike, see what he thinks. That's like dad number 2, right?
Yeah,
so I called Mike Troy. And I called Mike Troy, and Mike's like, oh, get out of the Air Force, go in the Navy and become a SEAL. And I'm like, well, Mike, I'm at the Air Force Academy. Like, taxpayers paid for me to become an Air Force guy. I don't think I can go in the Navy. And Mike's like, I don't know. I think you can look into it. And I did look into it, and he was right. If you go to a military service academy, because of the Title 10 funding and authorities, you technically can be commissioned in another service. You just got to get some approvals and do a bunch of paperwork. So the longer story continues. I graduated. I ended up being commissioned as an ensign in the United States Navy. Went into the Navy, didn't get into SEAL training initially. BUDS stands for Basic Underwater Demolition School. But every 6 months I submitted the application. I kept getting denied. And so after 3 years, I finally got it. So I graduated Air Force Academy in 92, cross-commissioned into the Navy, was a salvage diver. I was a hard hat salvage diver for 3 years in the Navy, and finally got approved to go to SEAL training or BUDS school, BUDS training, and went to BUDS and became a SEAL in 1996. So did another 21 years in the Navy as a SEAL and retired out of SOCOM headquarters, Special Operations Command at SOCOM headquarters here in Tampa, Florida, 4 years ago. So I did, 25 years in the Navy. 21 of those years I was in the SEAL teams for all that interesting time. Kosovo, Bosnia, and then 9/11 happened, and all the dynamics that changed after 9/11. And I did all that and retired out of the Navy 4 years ago. Went to go work for Steven Munatonis, who you know, that's how the intro happened, and went to go work at this company, Katsu. And I've been with Katsu for the last 4 years. None of that story touches on the open water swimming part.
But it's a
But
good overview.
that's part of the
Take us.
story that I'm sure we'll get to.
Yeah. I'm so curious about, like how, what I'm curious about SEAL training. What else do you want to tell us about? When did you first get into open water? So you had your training with Mike Troy, and did you guys do open water as kids?
No, never once, but I was a surfer growing up, so I liked being in the waves. I liked being in the ocean. I always was, I don't know, like a hyperactive ADHD, whatever you want to call it. I was just always bouncing off the walls. But the one thing in life that seemed to really calm me down and just help me focus on whatever was swimming and working my ass off for Mike, or if not with Mike, in the ocean. And I've always had this weird kind of affinity to the water. I saw it with our kids as well. When Sean was born, we have 3 kids, Sean, Ryan, and Meg. Sean's 19. Anyway, when he was first born, he'd be bouncing off the walls. And as soon as we laid him in the water, it was like, And I was like, oh yeah, it makes so much sense. That's exactly how I am. But I never swam open water with Mike. I went to swim at the Air Force Academy for Casey Converse, and every year at winter training, we would do an open water swim. So one of the afternoon workouts at Christmas training every year was like a structured open water swim. Okay. I remember one of them was at Ala Moana Mall, or outside Ala Moana Mall in Waikiki. We had Christmas training in Hawaii once, and I guess, yeah, that probably was my first kind of quasi open water. I don't know if you consider that open water, swimming back and forth in the ocean in front of Ala Moana Mall.
Yeah,
but it was beautiful. And I remember that sensation of like no walls and being able to kind of find that rhythm and then lose yourself a little bit in that rhythm. I remember thinking, wow, I never feel like this when I'm in the pool, because
the walls come up too fast. You gotta turn.
Yeah, when you come, every time you hit a wall, it kind of disrupts everything.
So I think,
or if you're doing the set, every time you stop and you squeeze in that 5 seconds of conversation, catch your breath for a couple of seconds, and then you go. You never, at least I never really got into that zone. And so Christmas training with Casey was the first time I experienced that zone. Then so I started playing around with it a little bit more, enjoyed it.
But you're going to school in Colorado Springs, so there's nowhere to swim around there. Open water is there? No
open water in Colorado Springs.
Right. So how did you, where did that end up taking you? So you get a little taste of it, and then what do you do?
Well, I remember I was stationed in Germany. We had a tour in Germany in it's when Sean was born in Germany. So we were there in 2002 to 2004, and during a trip to Naples, Italy, we had some. I had some downtime. Like I remember I had this whole open morning, and I just read some article about somebody having swam the English Channel, and it was a beautiful morning, and I just had this I want to go for a swim, and there's water right there, right near the hotel. So I put on some shorts. I didn't have a swimsuit or anything. I just put on some shorts, borrowed some goggles, and I went for the swim, just a long swim. And I remember thinking of the English Channel while I was doing this swim. I was like, man, someday maybe that would be something really cool to do. But Shannon, the water was warm, clear. There was like beautiful scenery. I could see girls on the beach in bikinis walking around. I was like, oh, this is probably just what it's like to swim.
Tour de France, yeah, exactly.
But I remember I just kept going and going, and again I like lost myself in it. Next thing, by the time I looked at my watch, I'd been swimming for an hour and a half, but I never turned around. I was just enjoying the scenery, and I was like, oh shit, I got to be at a meeting in a half hour, so I had to swim to the beach, and sprint all the way back to the hotel, change, and was late to the meeting. But that kind of planted a seed that, I don't know, like someday I had it in my head at that point. I was like, God, maybe someday I'll do that. I was not a distance swimmer in high school or college. I was like I was a breaststroker, 200 breast, 100 breast, 200 IM, 100 fly, but nothing over a 200 ever.
Right.
Yeah, so because let me back up. In 2002, in early 2002, one of my good friends from SEAL Team 2, Neil Roberts, he was killed in Afghanistan, and he was the first SEAL to die after 9/11. And I always thought it would kind of be cool someday to memorialize him in some way, but I never put two and two together. And then after that tour in Germany, the Navy decided to send me to Monterey, California. There's a postgraduate school there, the Naval Postgraduate School. And so I went to school there, and what did we say? It's like defense analysis, unconventional warfare. I think technically the class was or the master's program it's Master's of Science. So you do some modeling and stuff.
Yeah.
But the title of the course load is SOLIC, SOLIC, Special Operations Low Intensity Conflict.
Huh.
So my master's is in a Master's of Science in SOLIC, which is basically, unconventional warfighting.
Wow,
which is
fascinating.
Sort of weird. But while I was there, I had a lot of downtime.
Okay.
And I remember thinking, wow, this would be kind of a cool time to do something in memory of Neil. And I remember having a conversation with Mike, and I don't remember how exactly it came up. And he had no idea about, like a year earlier, I'd been swimming in Naples and oh, wow, maybe someday I'll do the English Channel. And I was talking to Mike, and I was talking about Neil, and I had some downtime, and I would like to do something in memory of Neil and maybe raise some money for the Navy SEAL Foundation, because at that time we were starting to lose more guys over in Afghanistan, and there was a need for surviving spouses and kids to help them out in any way. And we had the UDT SEAL Association, and we had the Navy SEAL Foundation, both of which would help in different ways, but they didn't have much money at that time. when I went to Monterey, which was in early 2004. And so anyway, I'm talking to Mike about it, and Mike's like, without skipping a beat, he's like, you should raise money for him, his family, and you should do it by swimming the English Channel.
Wow.
I don't know where that came from. And I'm like, Mike, I was a breaststroker, I'm like 200. He's like, yeah, but you went through SEAL training. It'd be a breeze, no problem. You can do it. And I was like, well, okay. It's funny you say that because I've actually thought about that in the past, not for swimming it in memory of Neil, but I have thought about doing it. So that started the whole conversation. And then I reached out to Karen Burton. I don't know if that name rings a bell, but Karen was one of our coaches back at the Air Force Academy, and she was an incredible distance open water swimmer herself. Ironic, I actually don't know her married name. Ooh, she'll kill me for that. But anyway, Karen. So I called Karen and I was like, hey, I've never really done anything hard open water, but it looks like the first real one I'm going to do is the English Channel. Could you help me? And she's laughing. She's like, oh my God, are you serious? You sure you don't want to do some stuff leading up to that? And I was like, well, I'm at school. I got a little bit of time, and I have this window where it looks like the school will let me fly out to Dover, and they'll give me a little bit of time to go do this.
You have a son that's how old at this point, and you're on the family front. What's your wife thinking?
Oh, well, yeah. What's my wife thinking? That's a great question, because well, one of the things Karen said was you have to start acclimating to cold water. When's the last time you swam in 58, 59 degree water? And I'm like, without a wetsuit? And she's like, yes, John, without a wetsuit. And I'm like, never? Well, no, that's not true. At Buds. I mean, at Buds, we did stuff in cold water, of course.
Yeah, for sure.
But I've never done an open water swim with no rubber on. I mean, in Buds, you do these 2 mile ocean swims all the time, but you always have on a wetsuit top. And she's like, yeah, that's you need to start acclimating. So back to Katie's thoughts on this whole thing. So like the next 6 months of my life, I was kind of getting ready for this event, and I told Katie, who was pregnant with Ryan. So Sean was really young. Ryan had not been born yet. And Katie's like, well, what is entailed with this training for the English Channel? And I said, well, I got to eat a lot and I got to swim a lot. It'll be fun. It'll be easy. How hard can it be, right? And she's like, well, okay, so how's this look? And Karen and I came up with a kind of plan, which was basically, a gradual increase of yardage up to a point, and then kind of a quick decrease in yardage. But alongside with the yardage graph was a increase immersion time, regardless of how far you swam, how long you were in water. And Monterey is a good place to do that.
Great place, yeah.
Yeah, it's usually around that 58 to 62, somewhere in there. And so that's kind of what we did. We the first time I tried swimming without any rubber in Monterey, I think I lasted like 5 minutes and jackhammered for like the next 15 minutes in the car with the heater on high.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God. I remember calling Karen that night, and I was like, yeah, I'm not so sure about this. Well, because the people you have on this podcast, this is, they do this over and over again. They're like marathon swimmers, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the website, marathon swimmers.
Right.
I didn't even know what a marathon swim was. I was like, does that mean it lasts a long time, or does that mean it's a certain distance? Does it, is it a temperature?
Right.
I didn't know anything about it. I mean,
Yeah.
I thought I'd be okay,
Yeah.
I thought it'd be okay doing having the SEAL training as a background.
Yeah, take us there for a second. What was it like with your swimming background going into buds? I'm curious. Like, did you feel like, I guess you've kind of read some books and whatever and heard a little bit about buds training, and you hear about it from the perspective of like non-swimmers. I'm curious what it was like for you.
Well, SEAL training's really interesting. You get big, burly, strong guys on one end of the spectrum, all the way down to somebody that's like just over 5 feet tall and has almost no body fat and looks like maybe they've never been involved in sports before. Mm-hmm. And you have the whole spectrum, tall, short, fat, skinny. And nobody has really figured out from body type wise who is going to succeed and who fails. So then it becomes, okay, well, we can't really tell by body type. What about by sports background? And there have been some trends, I guess, of people that seem to do better than others. Wrestlers seem to do really well at buds. Water polo players, ironically, seem to do really well at buds. But other than that, no real rhyme or reason. But I think anybody that's gone to buds and has made it all the way through to training would tell you it is so much more about what's upstairs, that psychological perspective of what you're going through versus the physical aspect of it. It's so much more mind over brawn or body type or strength or power or endurance. It's
okay. You're telling us about buds and my internet dropped.
yeah.
So, yeah, you can't tell.
So we had a little break there.
Yes, commercial break.
Exactly.
So you were telling us about how you can't tell from somebody's body type or physiology or their same thing, body type, physiology, or their sports background, but you can't predict how they'll do in buds. Is that right?
Yeah, in our buds class, we had we started with 189, I think was the number that we started with in my class, and we had guys from 6'4" down to 5 foot plus, and we had big thick guys, we had little skinny guys, and you just when you look at the of the original 189, we had 22 graduate, and we had a couple other guys fold in from a previous class that were medically rolled into our class. But from the people that started to the people that finished, we had tall guys, we had short guys, we had guys with athletic background, guys without an athletic background. But the one thing I would say we all had in common was that perspective of once we started this program, we were not going to quit, no matter what. Understanding we might get hurt, we might break a bone or something and get rolled to another class, but that no matter what happened, we would never ring the bell. And that is there's kind of I don't know if it's a psychological aspect, but I mean it's just it's hard to explain other than everyone has that in common, and you can take that out into working in the teams when you're in a small team. What you can accomplish as a small team with fellow like-minded teammates is incredible. And one of my biggest takeaways from Buds was that my body was able to do much more than what I mentally thought initially that my body could do.
Yeah.
You get broken down, and you think you can't be broken down any further and still function, and yet they break you down further and you still function, and yet they break you down further and still function. And then they put you into Hell Week, and Hell Week is just under a full week of little to no sleep. A lot of guys will say no sleep. That's not necessarily true, because if you're boat crew, they break you into boat crews, right? And if your boat crew wins an event, you might get a 5-minute nap. And if your boat crew loses an event and comes in last, you might have to go run with your boat an extra half mile or something like that, So it definitely pays to be a winner in Hell Week. But you learn a lot about yourself when sleep is taken away from you. And you learn a lot about your teammates. You learn a lot about what makes people tick. And it really is amazing how deep you can dig internally and achieve some incredible things.
It makes marathon swimming sound kind of easy.
It makes what?
Marathon swimming sound kind of easy compared to something like that.
Well, ironically, you'd be surprised how many people go to Buds are really not that great of swimmers. I mean, you would think that the field teams, everybody's great swimmers. That's not necessarily the case. My class, there was one other swimmer that graduated in my class, and he was not a collegiate swimmer. He swam in high school. We had a bunch of wrestlers, a bunch of football players. We had 2 guys that were cross country runners. They didn't do very well in the cold water, but they had that mental, I'm not going to quit. I'm going to go hypothermic, and they're going to have to pull me out of the water a bunch of times, but I'm not going to quit.
Wow.
Yeah, it was fascinating time. The most fun I had in the Navy was at Buds. And I know that sounds so bizarre, because it is kind of brutal, nasty training, but you become so close and so tight with the guys that do make it through all that training, that 6 months of just agony, cold, wet, and miserable. But it's also, in a bizarre sort of ways, kind of fun. There's something about when you're laying in the surf zone and everybody's jackhammering, and everybody, you lock arms, and you're all laying there, and the waves are just washing over, and they have you laying in the sand, and the instructors will say something like, okay, we're gonna lay here until somebody quits. And it's like, you're like looking up and down, and it's like, wow, this really sucks. I hope somebody quits. And then as soon as an instructor would say, almost every time within like 2 minutes, somebody would get up and they'd go ding, 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 ring the bell 3 times. And that's what happens when a guy quits. They ring the bell and then they leave. And it's kind of Machiavellian. You have the instructors just hovering, just saying, hey, hot coffee and donuts right over there. All you got to do is ring the bell. And during Hell Week, our numbers dropped by about 3/4. I'd say 3/4 of the guys that quit during those 7 days.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, real interesting time. But I think your real question was, how did swimming help you with SEAL training? And a lot of people freak out during the drown proofing, during the breath holding, during the underwater knot tying, and all these evolutions that the instructors have you do in open water or in a pool. And for swimmers, that is the one time I would say during Bud's train where you can just take and just relax.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
honestly, the water stuff is so damn easy if you grew up in the water.
Yeah.
So
But then
that was relaxed time.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. And then just how Bud's prepped you for marathon swimming. Take us back to Monterey, jackhammering on the beach. You have this history of, getting through anything, bonding with a team, doing amazing things. I feel like that's a little bit of what marathon swimming is. So take us back to your prep for the English Channel.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if anything, if I took anything away from Bud, two of the physical things I took away were one, when you're super tired, how to very, very much focus to still accomplish focused skills, whatever they are. But the other was cold. They really go out of their way to make the students really, really uncomfortable, and they do that with cold water. Different special operations trainings do it in different ways. Ranger training, man, you got to hike a long way, and it's brutal. The Army Special Forces, you got to be able to live off the land, in the mountains and in the forests and all that. Everybody focuses on different things, and I'm not saying Bud's only focuses on making you cold, wet, and miserable, but cold water is a big part of it. That's how they kind of break through and find guys' weaknesses the quickest. So you learn how to function when you're right on that edge of being hypothermic. So from that perspective, from the cold water perspective, I think it absolutely helps prepare for a channel swim in this case.
Mm-hmm.
And then also just that physical exhaustion when you get to that level, when you don't think initially you can do more, understanding deep down, understanding that you actually can keep going, and understanding that no matter how cold you are, if you just kick hard for a few minutes, you can warm yourself up.
Yeah.
And just always moving, and all those things you kind of learn in Buds. And they all absolutely helped in Monterey, and slowly acclimated over time, and worked my way up to I believe it was a 10-hour threshold swim, or like you had to show in order to get the final approval to go over and do the swim. You had to show that you spent 10 hours in water, no warmer than, I think the max was like 62 maybe.
That's what I was gonna say. I think it's 62.
Yeah, I think 62 in Fahrenheit. So we went up to San Francisco. This is where I met Susie Dodds. Actually, she helped me out. Nice. And got me in with the club up there. It was like, oh yeah, you're gonna do channel. Here's what we recommend, and do laps around the San Francisco Aquatic Park.
Yeah.
And yeah, she was great. She helped line up kayakers. She was a kayaker, and they had a rotation They taught me a lot about feeding. I remember looking up where I was going like 3 times in a row, and she taps me with the paddle, and she's like, "Hey, stop looking forward. Why are you doing that? Just look at me."
Gonna wear
And that
yourself
was great
out.
because she's like, if you look forward every 5 to 7 strokes over the course of a 12-hour swim, think of all the energy you're wasting. You never need to look forward. Just swim and look to the side. And as long as you see the boat, everything's good. Little tips like that during that 10-hour swim were great. And then I always tell people that swim in San Francisco, and it didn't even matter how far you went. It was more about breaking through that mental barrier of knowing you can be. I think the temp that day was like 60 degrees, but that just knowing that you can be in 60-degree water for 10 hours is huge. Huge for me. It was because I had no background in this, so that was very helpful. And then after that, there was a Tahoe swim. The Lake Tahoe relay swim.
Trans Tahoe relay, yeah.
The Trans Tahoe relay, yeah. My dad was a ski patrol in Tahoe for like 30 years.
Oh, awesome.
And my family has a cabin up there, and Karen thought that it'd be a good idea to do the Trans Tahoe relay as a solo.
Of course, yeah.
She's like, yeah, that'd be a good confidence booster. You should do it. And so, but she's right, because you had the immersion thing in Aquatic Park, being in the water for 10 hours, swimming for 10 hours. To this day, I don't know how far I swam. I didn't have any like GPS tracker or anything like that.
Right.
But with the Trans Tahoe swim, I don't remember how. Do you know?
Did you do the width? It does the width, right? So it's like 12 miles or something.
Just the width. Yeah, like 12 miles. But knowing, okay, 12 miles, did it, no problem. Stayed in cold water for 10 hours, did it. I'm not going to say no problem.
Right.
But that and back to the mental piece with Bud. When you finish Bud, you mentally know that you can do anything in a certain operational capacity wise. If you're told that you're going to go on a mission and you're going to have to be up for 3 days straight, you don't even give it a second thought. You're like, yeah, I know I can do that. It's the same idea, that coming away from the San Francisco swim and the Trans Tahoe swim, it was like, okay, I can do this. And at the same time was raising money. And that was going very well. Actually, there was a San Francisco Examiner article they did, and that was really cool. He came and witnessed part of that 10-hour swim, and he wrote a cool article about Neil and the cause. And then at the bottom of the article, he gave some information on if you want to donate. And I remember thinking, it's a military cause and it's San Francisco. I'm not going to get any money out of that.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I was so wrong.
Really?
The majority of our fundraising came out of that article.
Wow.
And I got so many cool letters supporting the swim and what it was about, to help Neil's family, but also to help Gold Star families, spouses, and surviving kids and all that. And the message was super strong. It was like, hey, we're behind you 100%. When you're doing the swim and it starts to really suck, think about us. And that's one of my messages, I guess, for in marathon swims or anything really, when people are going out to go do or take on a like something that is just going to be really, really difficult and challenging, psychologically and physically. It's always best, in my opinion, to do it for a cause, something that's greater than yourself.
Yeah.
Whether you're raising money or not. I mean, it could just be in memory of somebody, it could
Mm-hmm.
be raising awareness. In my case, it was kind of in memory of Neil, but raising resources and funds for the Navy SEAL Foundation and the UDT SEAL Association.
Okay.
So yeah, that was.
Take us to England. What was it like when you got there? Did you feel ready?
When I got to Dover,
Mm-hmm.
well, I remember Chris Osman was the pilot, and he met us there. So we fly out to we fly. God, what did we do? I guess we flew to London and then we rented a car, drove to Dover. But Chris met us there, and it was Katie, my wife, Sean, who was almost 2. we might have made some mistakes in this, because not only did we have Sean, who was almost 2, but we had brand new 1 month old Ryan.
That had to have been a long,
And
hard plane ride.
yeah, I think on the first leg of the flight out of Monterey for this monster trip out to Dover, the first leg of that trip, Katie and I were looking at each other, we're like, this is really a wise plan. But we were like trying to treat it as a little vacation. But anyway, so it's Katie, Sean, Ryan, myself, my mom and dad, and another family friend, Joe Walsh, all met us there as well. My dad and Joe were the support crew on board with Chris Osman, his crew, and then a Channel Association observer to make sure everything was copacetic with the rules.
Mm-hmm.
And so we got out there. I gave myself a 2-week weather window. I wasn't a first swimmer for Chris. I was a second swimmer.
Okay.
And if I remember, this was in 2004, so a few years ago. But I remember getting there and Chris giving us a weather brief and saying, so-and-so has first right of refusal on every good weather day. And in the meantime, this is where we should do some swimming in the bay here, or in the, not the bay, but, right outside where our hotel was. Yeah, it was a good place to do some pace counts and get an idea of my pace and speed for Chris to do all the charting on where best to take off from and when best to leave based on the tides. So this was all new to me. I didn't know anything about all this, but we learned a lot from Chris, and met some other swimmers that also were waiting to go and for a good break in the weather and the tides and everything. So we got there. I felt like I was ready. I was confident. I had talked with Neil's wife, Patty, and she had given me a really good pep talk before flying over. I talked with Mike Troy, of course. He'd given me a good pep talk, and went over there. And Chris said, "Okay, well, I'll let you know. I'll try to give you, 6 to 8 hours heads up, but no promises. Just be ready to go."
Right.
And I was like, okay. So the first night, nothing, and we swam the next day, eating a lot, trying to, stay bulked up. Oh my gosh, Shannon, I had put on like, because I remember I was usually 215, and I was it was 25, so I was 240. So I had put on
Wow.
25 pounds for this effort. And But yeah, lots of insulation. But so yeah, and I can't remember. It was, I want to say it was like 3 or 4 days after we had gotten there, and we had like, okay, we're gonna go. And but then the guy before me who had said he didn't want to go, then he changed his mind at the
Oh,
last
goodness.
minute. He said, "No, I'm gonna go." Oh my gosh. But anyway, a couple days later, I can't remember all the details, but I know when Chris called us was late at night, and he said, "Let's go at 3 o'clock this morning. And we'll load the boat at 3 in the morning, and we'll have a 4 o'clock departure from Shakespeare Beach." And I was like,
Mommy,
hello.
when I press something on my
See
computer,
if brother can help. I'm almost done, okay?
no,
Do you want to say hi? No, there you go. You can say hi.
Who's that?
This is Soren.
Hi. How are you?
John, I can't hear you. My headset on, but can brother help
Hi.
you, do you think?
no, he can't.
He can. Okay, can you do Legos for a little bit? I'm almost done, okay?
Okay,
Thanks.
but mommy,
What, baby?
My computer, when I press something, it doesn't go to it.
Oh, okay. You want to try turning it off and turning it on? Maybe
No, that's what we tried.
Oh, okay. Can you share with brother? We're almost done. Can you close the door and out? Thank you. Almost done. Sorry about that. Sorry.
That's all right. We probably have one of those interruptions coming on my end any minute now. So
Yeah.
So
I'm curious.
I'll try to speed it up.
Okay. Okay. So you get we're leaving at 3 a.m., which is in like 5 hours. So quick, grab a nap. That's the call.
Yeah, and yeah, of course, I slept really well for
Yeah,
that
of
night.
course. No.
Now it's starting
the
to
1 month
sink
old
in.
and the 2-year-old either.
Yeah, exactly. And now it's starting to sink in of what I'm getting ready to do, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my God, I'm not a marathon swimmer. What the hell am I doing here?
You are now.
But we loaded up, and he took us out to Shakespeare Beach, put some chem lights on me, and swam in for the start. There was like a reporter on the beach taking some pictures and stuff. That was kind of cool. And did a short interview, said a prayer, and jumped in the water and started. And I remember at the beginning, it was so calm. Like there was not a breath of wind. It was like being like when you jump in the pool and you're the first one swimming, there's no ripples or nothing. It was awesome. And I remember thinking, oh God, thank you very much, because it's going to be this way the whole way
Right,
across.
yeah, for sure.
Oh my God. No, that as soon as the sun started coming up, the wind picked up with it. And I would say we probably made it. Well, here, let me back up. The feeding, I thought that was, we experimented with a lot of stuff. And back to Karen, Karen had given us a lot of good pointers and trial and error on her end. And what we ended up going with was every 20 minutes. And then what would happen is my dad on the deck of the boat at 20 minutes, he'd wave 2 chem lights. And when I saw the chem lights, I would swim closer to the boat. And he had, we had a large water bottle, like, a bicycle water bottle, but a extra large one. And it was on a piece of yellow polypro line, that kind of rope that floats.
Yeah.
And so I'd swim over close, and then they would throw the water bottle out in front of me. and I would swim over the line. And when I felt the line, I'd turn over on my back and just kick, back to, always moving. And I would just keep kicking and drink the whole water bottle on my back. And then once I was done, I just let it go, turn over, and keep going. And every 20 minutes, the whole way across, that's how we did it. And I would say, even with the wind and the chop and stuff, not until about halfway did I have any problems at all. Like, it was, I don't want to say like enjoyable, but I was in the zone that we were talking about earlier. And it was great. And then I don't know what happened, but halfway across the swells in the wind, it turned from swells to more like water, like waves hitting each other.
Oh, yeah.
And it became like and I think it had something to do with the tidal shift that was going on, like wind going this way, tide going this way. I think I started and it was wind and tides going together, and then the tidal shift, and then it was winds and tides going up. And so it was the waves just, and it was like being in a freaking washing machine.
Yeah.
And I did not feel like I was making any progress.
Right.
But apparently we were still making progress. It was just real slow. And I remember I started having a lot of shoulder problems, and I knew I might have some shoulder problems. So they tried giving me some anti-inflammatory, taped to the side of the water bottle. And I tried taking those pills, but then, like a half hour later, I'd be throwing it up.
Oh, no.
It's not good. But still making forward progress. And I remember at one point being really just mentally so dejected, or just down on myself, and thinking, I remember all these negative thoughts, just like, oh, what the hell
was
am I
I
doing?
thinking?
Why am I out here? This is not me. I am not a marathon swimmer. I'm not gonna make it. Oh my God. And just all this negativity in my head. And I remember the wind was howling at that point. And I look over to Chris's boat, and it's like my dad and Joe Walsh was the other guy. My dad and Joe. It's like they knew. Oh, by the way, my wife and my mom are not anywhere near the chase boat, or the
good with the baby.
The boat. They are they are on a ferry going across the channel in the rental car to go meet me on the other side. That's a whole nother adventure. My mom, Katie, Sean, who had to be basically on a leash, and then the newborn Ryan. That's a whole nother story. So they're not on the boat.
But you have some incentive to get to the shore because you're expecting your family to be there, right?
Yeah. That's part of the motivation. Get over there so I can hug Katie and the kids and have a picture or something, right? So the wind's blowing. I'm miserable. I have these negative thoughts in my head. And I think Joe and my dad kind of saw it all happening. And I'll never forget. And I take this one breath, and I'm looking to my right, and I look and I see the two of them holding something in the wind. And I take another couple strokes, and I look again, and I remember the wind's blowing, and they're both holding an American flag between the two of them that they had snuck onto the boat. I didn't know. And I remember I saw the American flag, and I remember, and I get emotional just thinking about it.
I get goosebumps thinking about it. Wow.
I remember like stopping in the water, and like my goggles are filling up with tears, and I'm like dumping them. And I'm like, oh my God, what am I thinking? I'm not doing this for myself. I'm doing this for Neil. And it was like, Shannon, it was like all the pain and suffering and all that stuff, it just went away. And I was just like, all right, man, let's go. And my dad said like my stroke count went from like 52 to like 60 for like the rest of it. It's like, and it was so cool that I don't, it was but it gets back to that mental piece. It's such an important part of doing these long duration events. So everything was good at that point until, and this was something Susie told me, this is something Karen told me, Dirk Boma is another friend of mine who had swam over there. All these people told me, when you start getting close, still never look forward.
Right.
Don't look forward. Just look at the boat. And I was like, well, why wouldn't you want to look forward when you start getting close? It's like, just trust me, don't look forward. Well, I could, I knew we'd been going for like 11 hours, 11 and a half hours. And I remember thinking with my pace, and we were shooting for that piece.
Cape Grenade.
Cape Grenade, yeah, that sticks out the furthest. And I was like, oh, we gotta be getting close. And I'm right on time. I was wearing a watch. I think that was a mistake.
Totally.
I was wearing it. I was like, all right. So I looked forward, and it was windy, but it was clear. It was the sun was out. Thank God. That makes a big difference too. When the sun. And I looked, and I saw the cliffs, and I remember thinking, yes. And I swam again, and then I looked again, and they were further away. I think. Right. I wasn't sure. And then I'm like, that was weird. And I looked up again, and they were definitely further away. And it felt like I was swimming backwards. And that was such a downer. Oh my God. After all, it's been like 12 hours into it at this point. It feels like I'm going backwards. I remember going, what the fuck's going on? But we missed it. And so we missed that tidal shift had come, and we missed the point. So I think I understood what was happening, but it sure felt like I was going backwards.
Yeah.
So but after another half hour, finally saw the beach, saw it starting to get closer. Started swimming really hard, and I was definitely kind of fighting the current to get in, but got in, finished in 12 and a half hours, 12:26 I think it was. Sat there on the beach for a little bit. I had a cap with an American flag on it, and I remember there were people on the beach, and I don't know, I kind of was thinking somebody would come up and say, hey, congratulations, or something. Nothing.
Right.
It was right after Lance Armstrong had won, whichever number it was at the time in 2004, the Tour de France. And I remember thinking, God, I wonder if they're not talking to me because. And the second thing I thought of was like, where's Katie?
Yeah, exactly.
Where's Katie, my mom, and the kids? And I'm like looking around, and I don't see them anywhere. And what had actually happened is they had been driving up on the cliffs up there, and they'd stop at a road, and then they'd go to the edge of the cliff and look and see the boat, get in the road, drive a little further, see the boat, and they were trying to judge it, and they misjudged it, and so I never saw them, and but they saw me swimming back to the inflatable boat.
Yeah.
So we didn't link up on the beach, which was kind of a bummer. But we all met back at at the White Horse Pub, and
nice.
got my free pint of Guinness. And called the first thing I did when I got back, right outside the White Horse Pub, is a payphone, or at least there was. And I remember I called Patty, and told her that we did it, and that was real special.
That was Neil's wife.
And Neil's wife, yeah. And so Neil, so I talked to Patty, and then went into the pub, had a Guinness, and so successful swim. Put my name up on the wall there. And
awesome.
That's my open water. That's my channel swim story. So we ended up raising about $30,000 for the foundation, which at the time was a lot. But now that since then they've made a lot more money to help out Gold Star families. So that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you learned about yourself through marathon swimming that you didn't already know from BUD/S and your previous life events?
I think it reinforced how important having your head right is.
Yeah.
Regardless of where you are from a physical perspective, it's important to have yourself psychologically prepared for something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And the psychological preparation is probably just as important, if not more important, than the physical preparation. So I learned that. I don't think I learned that about myself. I think it reinforced
it.
That.
Yeah.
But I will say that was one of the hardest things. I think that's probably the hardest thing I ever done in my life was that swim.
Yeah.
I think it was harder than anything I did at BUD/S.
Yeah. What a great cause.
BUD/S was tough, but you always knew, no matter what evolution that you were in during SEAL training, you always knew that evolution was going to end. It might not end for 20 minutes, it might not end for 3 hours, but you always knew it was going to end.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a controlled environment.
Yeah.
Marathon swimming, what I learned is it is an uncontrolled environment.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes the psychological piece even that much more important.
Yeah.
Staying calm and knowing that your training is going to help you pull through, and making sure that you have something to fall back on mentally, to keep you mentally strong.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. That's great advice. That's a good place to end it. Thank you so much for sharing your story, John. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries, Shannon. I'm glad Stephen hooked us up with each other.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. Have you heard of the Intrepid Water Accountability Group? We'll support and encourage each other on a private chat platform, pursue monthly challenges both in the water and on land, and meet virtually once a month to dive deep on a topic. If you'd like to join a group of like-minded limit pushers from around the globe, join the Intrepid Water Accountability Group. Find out more at intrepidwater.com.